Hello, welcome to Kudal Mudal. I'm Avnaja and today we are going to talk about spooky books. So let us open the doors to our magnificent world and get scared. So now that the lights are back on and we are back in our shiny bright world, I'll tell you that this is better because darkness and the spooky books and the horror genre are really not my cup of tea. There, I said it. I am not at all embarrassed to admit that spooky books and the horror genre do not fit well with me at all. They scare me and it's not a good feeling. I do not want to scare myself and spoil my night's sleep. So I usually do not read this genre. I know that is a little bit limiting, but anything for peace of mind, right? But Halloween is around the corner, and that is why I decided to do some digging to find out some spooky, scary books for you guys. Yes, so I've read some of these books as a kid, but they're still pretty creepy. And some of these books I researched and read particularly for you people. So yeah, pat on the back. I've become braver now, I guess. I'm not sure. Okay, so let's begin the video. Okay, so firstly, I'd like to tell you about my first meeting with the horror genre. I wouldn't actually call it horror, but back when I was in school, I read a book called The Hound of Bhaskar by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and that was a book which deals with the supernatural, and it scared me to the core. Yes, many of you may not find it a scary book at all, but for me it was pretty scary, and I couldn't sleep for at least a fortnight. Yes. So that would be my first recommendation to anyone who's like me or anyone who is wanting to explore this genre. Hound of Bhaskar should be where you could start, because that's where I started and it really shook me. Yes. Now the second novel that I'm going to recommend is called Coraline. This is also something that I read back in school, and it scared me. Because even though it is a story for children, it is a pretty original, frightening, and a story that is going to send a chill down your spine if you are a horror lightweight like me. Well, it may not be for people who are hardcore horror fans, but if you are a beginner into horror like me and extremely and conventional horror books scare you, then Coraline is the one for you, because it has got kind of a dark fairy tale vibes, okay? And Neil Gaiman is an amazing author, and he takes you into the story and completely changes your world by his amazing writing style. So this story will keep you intrigued, it will send chills down your spine, and it gets darker and creepier as the story progresses. It starts innocently enough, you'll pick it up just like you'll think, oh, it's a children's book, I can take it. But it is going to creep you and give you goosebumps when you least expect it to, okay? And I would suggest getting your hands on a graphic novel if you can, because the graphic illustrations are amazing and they definitely add to the experience. I'll give you a quick summary of the story. So Coraline is a young girl who moves into a new house and is kind of neglected by her parents, and she gets bored and starts exploring this house and finds a door, and when she opens the door, she enters into a parallel universe where everyone has buttons for eyes, and that's where things start getting creepy and dark. Sounds interesting? Well, you can give it a try if you want. Monsters are real. Ghosts are real too. They live inside us. And sometimes they win. Whew. That's what Stephen King says. And while doing my research, I came to the conclusion that you cannot complete your horror genre reading experience until and unless you have read a Stephen King. But I, being me, I didn't want to invest into a novel because I knew that I couldn't read it and it will spook me and I'll be scared. So that is why I decided to search for short stories by Stephen King, and guess what I found? The first one is called The Cookie Jar. Such an innocent name. And the story is not really a spooky story. It is not going to scare you or anything, but the writing style and the way it keeps you captivated and wondering about what is going to happen and what happened after you read it, it is going to blow your mind. And the second book that I found was called The Boogeyman. Boogeyman was a creepy book. It started out weirdly. It was weird and it ended on a dark note. So even though it was just around 10 to 15 pages long on a PDF format, but it was dark and the writing style, as always, was very captivating and it really did spook me. So these were the two works by Stephen King that I found on the internet and I read them. Now, if you're a hardcore horror fan and do want to invest into a novel, then you can read The Shining, It, or Pet Symmetry. All of them are amazing and super spooky. Now, moving on, as you know, I love my classics, and how could I miss out on horror classics? So I decided to research some and read some. So the first horror classic that I read was called Frankenstein. Now, Frankenstein and horror are kind of synonymous. The story by Mary Shelley about Dr. Frankenstein and the anguished monster he unwittingly created. This book is a cultural icon. It is going to make you scared to look around, quicken the beatings of your heart, and may even curdle your blood. Yes, it is something definitely worth reading if you are a horror fan. So I could not call my research complete until and unless I gave a go to the genius of Edgar Allan Poe. Right. So Edgar Allan Poe is one of the greatest horror novelists ever. And without reading his work, I couldn't have really finished this video. So I decided to read The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, and trust me, it gave me all the creepy feelings. It is a short story, a very quick read, but enough, just enough to give you goosebumps and that creepy feeling inside you. It is available for free on the internet if you search for it, and if you are a hardcore horror fan, then I recommend reading The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. As far as my research goes, it is an awesome one, so if you are a hardcore horror fan, you should definitely give it a go. Now, before winding up this video, I am going to tell something for my hardcore horror fans. Now, if you are a hardcore horror fan and are looking for conventional horror stories, then I recommend Rosemary's Baby. I have just read the summary of the book, so I'm not really the person to tell you anything about the story in detail, but it is a pretty famous book and a classic in the world of horror. So if you are into conventional horrors, this one should definitely be on your to be read list. The second one is called Carmilla. Now, this may not be as famous, but this was the book that originated or that introduced vampires into literature. Yes, and especially lesbian vampires. How cool is that? So, this is another book that should definitely be on your reading list if you are a hardcore horror fan. Apart from that, Dracula. Now, some say that Dracula was inspired by Carmilla. Dracula is, as we all know, the most famous vampire in the literary world, but he was inspired by Carmilla, they say. So, why not give him a go? Now that wraps it, and I hope you're spooked to read all the recommendations that I gave. Read them and do let me know in the comments which book scared you the most and gave you all the creeps. Okay, like this video if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, share this video with your friends and scare them. Happy Halloween! I will see you next time in another video. Till then, keep smiling, keep reading and keep exploring. Bye bye.